Hey, it's Adriana. I know you're listening to a podcast called How to Drink Less, but if you already know that alcohol doesn't belong in your life and you're done trying to moderate, I have something for you. I want to show you how to break up with alcohol for good and never look back. Because it's not sobriety itself you're resisting. You're resisting the way you've tried to do it until now, with rules and willpower and self-discipline. That version is exhausting. Nobody wants that. But in my coaching program, we don't just remove alcohol. We retrain your brain so you stop wanting it. And when you don't feel like you need to drink, sobriety becomes effortless and joyful and free. That's what I want for you. For sobriety to feel not like punishment, but like the reward. Book your free consultation via the link in the show notes, and let's do this. You're listening to How to Drink Less, and I'm your host, Adriana Cloud. Whether your goal is to cut back, take a break, or say goodbye to alcohol for good, this podcast will help you stop drinking on autopilot, learn how to manage cravings, and feel fully in control around alcohol. It's easier than you think. Listen on to find out how. Hey everyone, welcome back. Recently on the podcast, I talked about moderation and gave you a framework for how to think about moderation, what moderation actually looks like for you, how to evaluate what it's really costing you, and how to measure if you're successful at moderating. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, go and check it out. It's episode 47. But today, I want to talk about one of the alternatives to moderation. I want to talk about complete sobriety. And I will tell you the real reasons why you're not sober yet, and I bet it's not the reasons you're thinking. But first, I want to say a word about the term itself, sobriety, because that term comes with a lot of baggage. The common belief is that sobriety is not something that people choose voluntarily, because who in their right mind would give up the joy that alcohol provides, right? Who would trade the fun of drinking for a life of standing awkwardly against the wall at parties and never having any interesting stories to share and always going to bed early? And worse than that, for most people, when they hear that someone is sober, the immediate conclusion is that that person was an alcoholic. That's the common narrative around sobriety. So there's still a stigma attached to that word. I've heard it from several of my clients. They don't want to call themselves sober because other people would think that they used to have a problem with alcohol. Because again, in the popular imagination, one doesn't get sober unless one has been an alcoholic first. Just like words like alcoholic or addict can be a severe turnoff for some people, so can the word sobriety, because it basically implies the same thing. If you're sober, that must mean that at some point you were an alcoholic or you wouldn't be sober otherwise. We need more words in the English language. We don't have a good way to talk about choosing not to drink just because you decided you're done with alcohol. If someone says they're vegan, we don't go thinking, ooh, they must have really had a problem with bacon. They must have been addicted to ham and couldn't control themselves. How deplorable of them. They must be really weak. Or if someone says they don't smoke weed, is your first thought, ooh, they must have really had a problem with weed at some point? Probably not, right? But alcohol continues to be one of those things where, at least in Western societies, the implication is that if you're an adult, you're a drinker. And the only logical explanation for not drinking is because you had a problem and couldn't control yourself. And that right here, that conditioning and all the stigma around the term sobriety, is the first reason why you're still drinking and desperately trying to find a way to moderate so you don't have to give up alcohol completely. Because you're imagining that if you choose to quit for good, you will have to explain yourself for the rest of your life, and you believe that every time you tell someone you're sober, they will secretly conclude that you were a raging alcoholic. The other reason you haven't yet quit drinking is because when you hear the word sobriety, you're thinking that's a verdict for a life that is heavy and serious and drab. That's the narrative around what sobriety means. That's what we're fed from society and culture and social media. Even if it's not said explicitly, that's the implied meaning of sobriety, something that is the opposite of fun. So, when you think about choosing long term sobriety, you're picturing a state of constant deprivation and misery where you've lost your friends and you've lost your shortcut for fun and you're bored out of your mind for the rest of your life. I'll be honest, that's what I used to picture back when I was a drinker. I was so desperate to find a way to keep drinking, and I kept thinking, I need to figure out to get my drinking under control, otherwise I'll have to quit for good. That's the worst thing I could imagine, that I would reach a point where I would have to give up alcohol completely. I really did think that if I had to give up alcohol, I would just be bored and sad and lonely for the rest of my life. Luckily for me, at some point, after years of ever deepening self hatred, I decided that if eternal boredom was the price to pay to stop obsessing about alcohol and waking up feeling miserable every day, that price was worth it to me. So even though I firmly believed that sobriety would be depressing, there came a time when the alternative to keep drinking the way I was drinking and continue to ruin not just my health, but my self respect, that alternative became intolerable as an option, and so I chose sobriety at any price. But even more luckily for me, I was very wrong about what sobriety would look like too. Yes, there was a period of boredom and not having the faintest clue what to do with myself or how to talk to people if I wasn't mediating my awkwardness with alcohol. There were certainly weeks where I truly questioned if I could survive being this present with every single thought and feeling I had. I didn't really have any tools at the time, and I had very little support when I was on this journey. I was basically trying to quit on my own, and I didn't want my friends to know, lest I failed and then they would judge me. But here's the key thing that people misunderstand about sobriety, all the cliches and stigma aside. Even if we could wave a magic wand and erase your concern about what other people would think, the reason you're still hesitating to commit to sobriety is because you believe you'll miss alcohol. You think that even if you manage to muster up the willpower not to drink, you will still crave alcohol, and therefore you will constantly be plagued by FOMO and feelings of deprivation. You imagine you will keep looking at your friends' margaritas when you're out and wishing you could join them. You, like me, are believing that even if you manage to quit drinking, you will still miss alcohol every single day for the rest of your life. But what if that's not true? Ask yourself this. If you could wake up tomorrow and simply not care about alcohol anymore, would you still choose to drink? If you no longer craved alcohol at all, would you still have it? These questions are not theoretical or rhetorical. They're very real because the truth is, you absolutely can learn to not want alcohol ever again. I know that right now that might seem inconceivable, especially if you've been drinking regularly for years or even decades. You might struggle to imagine not wanting a drink. But let me remind you that you weren't born wanting alcohol. You were not born craving it. You probably didn't even like it the first time you tried it. I remember my dad letting me taste the foam from his beer when I was a kid because I kept asking, and I thought it was so disgustingly bitter. That's many people's experience. We initially are repulsed by the taste, and it's only because we keep trying it again and again that we eventually learn not just to tolerate alcohol, but to like it. That's all good news, because what you learned can be unlearned. The same way you taught yourself to tolerate and to like alcohol, you can teach yourself to not want it, because desire is a habit. Hear me when I say this, because normally we think of habits as something we do repeatedly. We think of the action and the behavior. But we can develop habits of thought and feeling as well. Anything you think repeatedly becomes a habit. Anything you feel repeatedly becomes a habit. That's because your brain loves efficiency and is always trying to automate everything. So if there is anything you think or feel or do regularly, your brain wires that into your subconscious, which means you can do it without having to consciously think about it. Think about some of the things you do every day, like brushing your teeth, pouring a cup of coffee, plugging in your phone to charge when you go to bed. You're not consciously aware of every movement involved in brushing your teeth. You've gone through the motions so many times that you can expertly brush your teeth while you're thinking about that annoying text from your sister. And it's the same with the desire to drink. You've had a glass of wine so many times while sitting on the couch with Netflix after dinner that your brain now starts anticipating the alcohol automatically as soon as you even think about Netflix. The key thing I want to emphasize here is that it's not just the act of pouring a glass and drinking it that have become habits. The desire for the drink has become a habit as well. Right now, there are certain triggers that tell your brain it's time to start craving a drink. It might be walking into the kitchen at 6 p.m., ready to make dinner. It might be when you pick up the phone to call your best friend and gossip. Your particular triggers will vary, but there are certain situations or certain people or certain feelings that you have conditioned yourself to associate with alcohol. And I bet right now, if you think about quitting completely, you're thinking of those moments and anticipating feeling deprived and disappointed. How could you possibly relax without a glass of wine? How would you handle stress if you are not drinking? But you can teach your brain to stop associating alcohol with those triggers. You can teach yourself to never want alcohol again. Human beings are blessed with something called neuroplasticity. Our brains have the ability to rewire themselves and adapt based on new experiences and based on what you repeat. And when you have rewired your brain not to want alcohol, guess what? It's very easy not to drink. When the desire is gone, and when you no longer feel like you need alcohol to relax or to dance with your friends at a gig, then you don't have to negotiate with yourself about whether or not you can have a drink. Alcohol becomes a non-issue. It's just not even relevant to your life anymore. That version of sobriety, where you're never even thinking about alcohol and you don't care about what everyone else is drinking because you're perfectly happy with your alcohol-free choice, that's real sobriety. That's the kind of sobriety I have, even though 6 years ago, I would not have imagined this was possible back when I was a drinker. But where I am right now, 5 years and 2 months sober, I simply cannot imagine ever wanting to drink again. I'm not saying I'll never drink, because I don't know the future, but I'm struggling to come up with a situation where I would feel even remotely tempted. And if I can get to this point, so can you. And I can help you, because it's actually quite simple. I'm not saying every part of this change is easy. If you want to free yourself from alcohol for good, you're going to have to feel some uncomfortable emotions, but the path itself is really simple. You need just three things. One, you need to learn how to manage cravings so you don't feel out of control when the automatic desire kicks in. This is the part where you learn to interrupt those associations between the trigger and the drink. And there are some very basic tools that I'll teach you so you can neutralize a craving in less than 60 seconds. Two, you practice how you want to feel and what you want to do instead of drinking. When you walk into the kitchen, ready to prep dinner, how do you need to feel in order not to reach for the Prosecco in the fridge? I will teach you a technique called mental rehearsal that helps you to build those new connections and to train your brain what to do so that not drinking becomes your new default and choosing not to drink becomes effortless. And three, if you want to break your dependence on alcohol for good, to the point where when someone offers you a drink, you laugh, which, by the way, happened to me for real a couple of weeks ago. Someone asked if I'd want a drink, and I just laughed. That's how absurd the idea was to me. If you want that to be your reality, you need to look at what you believe that alcohol has been giving you, whether it's confidence, a way to deal with chronic pain, a delicious treat, a way to tolerate annoying chores. Alcohol has been doing something for you, or at least that's what you've been believing. And when you understand what role alcohol has been playing in your life, you can change those beliefs and find other ways to fulfill your needs. That's the work I do with my clients every day, and that's what I would love to help you build as well. And I have a special offer for you. I'm teaching a free class this week on how to never want alcohol again, where I'll give you the exact framework to teach your brain to never crave alcohol ever again. If you're exhausted from constantly negotiating with yourself about when you can drink and how much you can drink, and you're ready to break up with alcohol for good, this class is for you. If you've tried willpower and rules and you're still stuck in the drink, regret, repeat cycle, this class is for you. It's not about self-discipline, it's not about counting drinks, and it's not about positive vibes. These are tools based on the latest neuroscience research, and they will dramatically change your relationship with alcohol. The link to sign up for the class is in the show notes, so go and save your seat now. This is a live event only. There will be no replays, but I am offering the class at 2 different times on 2 different days, so you have options. Thank you for listening, my friends, and I'll see you in class. If you're looking for practical advice for how to say no to alcohol and say yes to yourself, you will want to get on my email list. Sign up to receive my free guide with 7 steps to kickstart your sobriety. The link is in the show notes, so go and grab it now, and I'll see you soon in your inbox.